Good morning. Welcome back to the Planet Doug podcast, aka the Planet Doug Morning Audio Journal. And surprise, surprise, surprise to me, in a way. Even I knew I was doing this, but it's still a surprise to have it happen and suddenly find myself back at Port Dickson in Malaysia and back at the PD Seafront Hotel, one of my old digs here in Port Dickson. And it is Sunday, November 24th, aka the day my Indonesian visa expires. And that explains partially what I'm doing here. My 30-day visa for Indonesia expires. And because I needed to go to Jakarta, as I've talked about, to meet up with a Planet Doug subscriber and mystery benefactor, it made a lot more sense to come to Malaysia to go to Jakarta rather than staying in Indonesia and flying domestically. And it's actually cheaper to go this way than to fly domestically. So anyway, that's what was going on. And I had to leave Indonesia because my visa was expiring today. And this roar that you're hearing, I don't know if you can hear this roar. That is my $4 kettle from Tanjung Balai. Boiling water here in Port Dickson for my morning coffee. So excuse me while I pour myself a bit of this coffee. And one thing with these inexpensive kettles from Indonesia, they seem to melt when I use them in Malaysia. Maybe I'm imagining things, but I'm starting to feel like the electricity is a higher amperage or something here in Malaysia. Because this kettle is not one of these kettles that can take any voltage and any amperage. I mean, modern electronics, you can plug them in anywhere and it senses what the local current is and what the local voltage and amperage is, and it adjusts to use the local electricity. But this $4 kettle wouldn't have any fancy interior like that. So I'm wondering, because when I use it in Indonesia, it seems to be fine. But then when I bring one of these kettles to Malaysia and plug it in, I notice that the plug seems to get a lot hotter. Like it's drawing a lot more current here than it did in Indonesia. And that's why they start to melt and fall apart. I guess they're native to Indonesia. Once you bring the Indonesian kettle out of Indonesia, it doesn't thrive anymore. It needs that good Indonesian electricity. So I just poured the boiling water into my classic Canadian Tim Hortons mug. Ah, that's nice. So, what time is it? It's 7:30 in the morning, as I said, on Sunday, November 24th, the day my Indonesian visa expired. So I would have left Indonesia today, like on the same day my visa expired, but there was no boat. So I wanted to come to Port Dickson by ferry, just returning by boat. I love doing that. And my choices were limited. And they for whatever reason, they don't have a ferry scheduled for Sundays. So I was able to go on a Saturday, which was yesterday. And I have an air conditioner here in my room, but it makes a lot of noise, and I don't actually need it right now. The room is cool enough. So that thunking sound you may have just heard was me turning the air conditioner off, and now I can settle back, speak into my Rode Wireless Go microphone, drink my coffee, and I can tell the story from yesterday. I might be repeating myself a little bit, I'm not sure, because I had no plans yesterday to record a Planet Doug video, mainly because I've taken this ferry multiple times. Going way, way back, I took this ferry out of Port Klang to go to Tanjung Balai, and I remember shooting a video or two way back then. I don't think they're on my channel anymore, those really, really old videos. I sort of cleaned up the Planet Doug YouTube channel a little bit, and I took all of my super old experimental videos when I was just playing around for the first time, and I marked all of those as unlisted. So now when you go to Planet Doug and you're thinking, oh, what's the history of Planet Doug's YouTube channel? And you go back in time, the very first videos you're going to see, I think, are the ones from Bangladesh when I spent a month or two in Dhaka. And that seemed to be when the Planet Doug YouTube channel actually began. Everything before that was just me playing around because I never shot video before. And I had no intention of shooting video or having a YouTube channel. I just happened to have a YouTube channel like everybody does when you have a Google account. You have a YouTube channel whether you use it or not. And I was uploading random videos as well as, just random videos, just like I upload photos to the internet. I would occasionally upload a random video clip that I shot, kind of just experimenting, trying to figure out how to shoot video. Do I like shooting video? So I removed all of those videos, but there were some where I took the ferry from Port Klang to Tanjung Balai and then back again from Tanjung Balai to Port Klang, but those videos are now gone. But I did shoot them, and then I took this ferry from Port Dickson to Dumai, and I think to Dumai and then back again, and I shot a video both times. So I shot a full in-depth video about taking the ferry to Dumai on Sumatra, and I shot a full video coming back from Dumai to Port Dickson, and then I shot a video going by ferry to Tanjung Balai, and I made a video talking about how to take the ferry, how you buy a ticket, all that kind of stuff, behind the scenes logistics. So I've already made a lot of videos about these ferries that run between Malaysia and Sumatra. So when I was going to take the ferry back to Port Dickson yesterday, I had no intention of filming. I did have one of my GoPros in my knapsack, but I didn't even have my 360 camera in my knapsack. I had no intention of filming. But then as soon as I started the trip, some interesting things were happening around me, and I thought, in the spirit of Patreon, for example, why don't I just record a little bit here and there, and then I can take sort of this bonus video footage and I can throw it up onto Patreon just for fun, just to keep a record of these experiences. So then I did get out my smartphone and I started recording, and then I recorded a little bit getting on the boat and just sitting on the seat on the boat and telling the story of going to the ferry, all the things that happened. And I'm going to tell those same stories right now because I don't know what's going to happen with that video. I may or may not make something out of it. I may just never do anything with it. We shall see. So, let me grab my coffee. Yeah, I guess before I start that story, I'll just bring you up to date with my current situation because I'm sitting here in this room at the Seafront Hotel in Port Dickson. And I ended up here largely because in terms of a low-budget hotel, it was pretty much my only option. The only other place that is halfway reasonable is a Airbnb-style hotel called Marvel something or other. You can see it online. It's on Google Maps. If you look very, very carefully, you can track it down. The Marvel is downtown Port Dickson, and that was my first choice because it's within easy walking distance from the dock. So yeah, you can just walk from the dock and you get there because it is right downtown. It's right near the waterfront. But I eventually decided against staying there because they have an Airbnb system where you have to get the keys out of a lockbox and you have to get the code to the front door. And you can only get the code by email or by whatever system they use. So the owners of Marvel have complete control over everything. Like a place like the Seafront Hotel, check-in is 2 o'clock. But if you show up, say, which I often do, you show up at 11 or show up at noon, and you're there, and the room is ready, well, the hotel clerk sometimes, in Malaysia, quite often, will just check you in anyway. The room is ready, it's clean, it's ready to go, so, okay, you're here, here's the key to your room. But now when you're dealing with Marvel, It doesn't work that way because there's nobody there. There's no staff there. There's no front desk. There's no lobby. There's no hotel clerk to let you in. There's no open door. So basically, you're stuck until they send you the email. You're just staring at a code box on the outside. And if I remember right, their check-in isn't until 3 o'clock. And I thought there was a chance. I wasn't quite sure about the timing, but I could have shown up in Port Dickson at noon or 1 o'clock or who knows. But then I'm basically just stuck. I have to go to 7-Eleven or go to some cafe or a kopitiam and hang out for 2 or 3 hours waiting until they send me the email. And I'll be stressed out because I'm probably worried that they're going to forget about me, and I don't have Wi-Fi anyway, right? I'm going to be landing, and then you land in a new country. You generally don't have a SIM card yet, or you don't have data in your account. And so it was like all these hassles with Airbnb style accommodation. And then anyway, I decided not to book Marvel because of this lockbox situation. And then the Seafront Hotel is quite a bit farther away. It's like 2, maybe 3 kilometers walk from the dock, which is no problem for me. But then you are walking down the highway essentially, and there's no shoulder to walk on. It's quite an uncomfortable walk with all the traffic thundering by. You know, you're basically walking down a kind of secondary highway system. But in terms of price, the Seafront was the only other option. So I booked a room here. And of course, right from the jump, I was not happy about that. I mean, I love being in Malaysia. I have a lot of friends here now. I'm comfortable here. But I do find Malaysia is very poor value for a low-budget backpacker-style person like myself. Neighboring countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, even Thailand, much better value in terms of accommodation. I mean, of course, Malaysia offers you the finest in 5-star, 4-star, 3-star accommodation. If your budget goes even as high as 2 or 3-star, you're fine. If you're paying, I don't know, 100 to 150 ringgit a night, you don't even have to worry about it. Just look online or just pop into any hotel, pay 100 ringgit, and you're done. 150 ringgit, you're going to get a fine room. But as soon as you start looking for a money-saving option, a low-budget hotel, it's a wilderness here in Malaysia. There's very little choice. And then when you read the Google Maps reviews for these low-budget hotels, they're absolutely frightening. I think people respond a little bit too drastically. I see a lot of reviews from Malaysians, for example. I think they've come to expect a higher level of accommodation. They're not accustomed to low-budget living like I am. So when they see one of these hotels like Marvel or Surya here in Port Dickson or PD, and maybe you could get a deal for 50 ringgit a night, 60 ringgit is more common. And they think, oh, wow, look at that. That's a great price. And then they book it, but they don't realize what kind of hotel they're booking. So when they show up and they see what the room looks like and the condition of the facilities, they're kind of shocked. It's like, what? And then they write these horrible, like, 1-star reviews, really criticizing these low-budget hotels because they don't usually stay in places like this. And they don't really understand what they're getting themselves into. But having said that, the reviews might be overly negative, but at the same time, say compared to the hotel in Tanjung Balai where I was staying, it was a low-budget hotel, much, much, much cheaper than this place in Malaysia, but in its way, you get more value for money. So this room, I think it ended up costing about 75 ringgit a night, once you add in all the taxes and, of course, the dreaded Malaysian tourism tax, which I hate so much. So yeah, it's 10 ringgit per night that they charge you as a foreigner. Every single night you stay in Malaysia, you have to pay 10 ringgit to the government as a tourism tax. And I've never liked that system. It's a lot of money for a low-budget backpacker to pay. And it always comes as a bit of a shock and a surprise. And it's annoying because you pay it separately from the room rate, and then you show up at the hotel And sometimes they're aware that you've already paid the tax online. Sometimes they're not, and they need to get a receipt, and you got to download it and connect with them by email and email it to. It's just a whole big rigmarole. So when I was coming back to Malaysia and I knew I had to book a hotel, my heart sank a little bit. It's like, oh man, this again. And I decided to stay in Port Dickson for one night. So I booked the seafront hotel for one night, and then I booked my usual hotel in Kuala Lumpur for the rest of the week, the J Hotel Masjid, India. And I'm not a huge fan of the neighborhood in terms of atmosphere and eating options. For some reason, I struggle a little bit. I found a few places where I can eat there, but there are other neighborhoods that are more, I would prefer, say, to be in the Pudu area, or even, oh boy, I forgot the name of it. But there are a couple of other neighborhoods I'd like to be based in, but the hotels are much more expensive and you get less. So for me, the J Hotel Masjid, India, so that I think it might be the only actual hotel in the city that has single rooms. All other hotels, they only have double rooms, which makes it more expensive for a person on their own. But they actually have a single room. If you're willing to stay in a very small room, they can lower the price a bit for you. And then it's just good value. Some of the rooms I've had there lately weren't as nice. But my very first experience there, I got one of their newer rooms, I guess. And the bathroom was nice, the air conditioning was good, the Wi-Fi was good, the bed was good. It was just a comfortable room where everything worked, and the price was reasonable. And I occasionally got a really good deal on Agoda. Occasionally it would pop at up like 30 ringgit a night, and then that became my go-to place, especially when I could get it at that low rate. But the days of the low rate seem to be gone. It's more expensive now. I can't remember what I paid. It felt like I was paying too much, to be honest, because I was comparing it to my situation in Sumatra, where I was paying far less and more comfortable in a way. So, and anyway, so that's what's going on. I'm in the Seafront Hotel for one night in Port Dickson, and then my friend KY, he came down to Port Dickson. This was where he grew up, so his mother lives here. And then when I'm here, in my role as a Planet Doug, because KY is a subscriber to my YouTube channel as well as a friend. And then if he's available, he'll drive down to Port Dickson from KL and then pick me up and drive me into the city. And he offered to do that this time. So KY and I will be driving to KL today at some point, and then I'll be checking into the J Hotel Masjid for the week, and then this coming Saturday I'll be flying from KL to Jakarta, and then the Sumatra experience starts all over again. We'll start in earnest. But yeah, it was a little bit weird when I showed up at the Seafront Hotel, because I remember talking about this maybe in a behind-the-scenes video or in a real Planet Doug video about how checking in at the seafront got more and more complicated, because I'd be coming here from Vietnam or coming here from Thailand or from even Kuala Lumpur, and somehow checking in here was more complicated than anywhere else, because you had to fill out a form, which you don't often have to do anymore, but they actually have a big form. You got to write down your name and address and phone number and email and all this stuff. And usually when I show up, I'm usually hot and sweaty and tired, and my hand is trembling and my handwriting is horrible. And then the pen doesn't usually work and my hand is sweaty. Anyway, filling out one of these paper forms as you're checking in is always like, really? I've got to fill out this giant form now. I'm not in the mood, but I had to do that at the seafront. And then they asked for a 50 ringgit deposit, which you had to give them, and they have to fill out a new receipt so you're waiting for them to do that, and then you got to make sure to keep the receipt, and then you had to go through the whole Malaysian tourism tax rigmarole, and it was always just a huge hassle. I'd never enjoyed that process, especially when I just come from a place like Vietnam, where you walk into the hotel and they've already seen your reservation online. They know who you are and they recognize you when they come through the door, and they just say, "Hey, welcome," and they give you the key, and that's it. You're just done. Like there are no formalities at all, and I just love that because everything's online already anyway. They've got the Agoda reservation or the Booking.com reservation. All my ID is in that. Everything is there. So why do I need to fill out an application form when I'm standing in the lobby? And then I come back to Malaysia, and then it's like, all this again. But I'm telling that story because yesterday when I showed up at the seafront, none of that happened. It was quite interesting. They still had the form, but the hotel clerk, someone who was here before, and he's like the best hotel clerk I've ever seen in Malaysia. I can't think of his name right now, but there's a guy who used to work at the seafront, and I remembered him because he was so good at his job and so professional and so concerned about customer service, and that's quite rare, I find, in Malaysian hotels. And then he disappeared. I guess he was working at a different hotel for a while. Anyway, I showed up yesterday and he was there, and I was like, "Oh, you're back." And then he got out the form and he filled it out. So I was just chatting with him about, "Oh yeah, I just came from Sumatra, I took the ferry from Tanjung Balai, etc." Just small talk. And while we're just chatting, he filled out the whole form for me and then handed me the key to my room, and there was no request for a deposit either. And maybe that's because they know me so well. I've stayed here in the past. But anyway, it was a much easier and smoother check-in process. And we didn't have to talk about the tourism tax. So I guess he looked online, and now they're able to see whether I paid it or not online. And now they don't have to bother me about it anymore. Anyway, it was a much faster check-in process than I remember. Though in the past at this hotel, they would upgrade me. I'm booking their cheapest. They don't have single rooms, unfortunately, so I still have to pay for a double, either like a big double with a queen bed or a double with twin beds. So you're essentially paying for two people, even though you're just one person. But they would often give me this other room, which I think is a more expensive one. It's at the front of the hotel, has a window that looks out on the road, and if you squint your eyes, you can sort of see the sea. This is on the first floor, and this is the seafront hotel because it is right on the ocean, though there is a busy highway between the hotel and the ocean, but the ocean is there. It is a seafront hotel. It's not exactly what you might think. You think seafront and you're imagining a resort with a beach, something, but it's not that. It's just your basic motel style hotel, and but it is on the water. And the room that they would upgrade me to had a window facing the sea, even though I didn't pay for that level of room, but they would give it to me anyway. But this time, either they're busy or I'm just not a preferred customer anymore. I got what I paid for, and I got one of the rooms in the back. And then it's not as pleasing as the other room. Though there is a window, but it looks out onto an alley and another building. It's just basically junk and garbage back there. And you have to go back into these little bit more dim hallways. And then the key to the door lock is a very, very old-fashioned one. It's an older hotel, and you have to really fumble around with the key. And then when I opened the door to the room, I got hit with that like musty smell of a low-budget hotel room, and it was quite hot in here. And I fought with the air conditioner for a long time. It wasn't working. It was on, and it was blowing air, but it was just circulating normal air. There's nothing cold coming out. And then things in general were old and kind of broken, and that musty smell, and it was hot and stuffy, and it was like, and I paid whatever it was 3 times more for this room than the one I had in Tanjung Balai. So I was really missing the accommodation scene in Sumatra. But it is interesting how quickly you get accustomed to these things. Like when I opened the door to the room, my heart sank. It was like, ugh, nah, I don't like this room. But I've only been here one night, and everything feels better now. I've adjusted to everything. I figured out how to use the air conditioner. Took me a while. I'm looking at the remote and I'm looking at the air conditioner and thinking maybe there's a setting. It looked like there was a light flashing on the air conditioner and it looked like it was a timer. Like maybe the previous guest had accidentally set up a timer, and that's why it's waiting for the clock to tell it it's time to turn on. So I sat there with the remote control, just pushing button after button after button, trying to figure out how I can get this darn thing to work. And for the longest time, I couldn't do it. Like yesterday, most of the day, I couldn't get it to work. So it was just blowing hot air around the room. And then eventually, I pushed a proper combination of buttons, turned it off, turned it back on, and then, cold air started to come out. It's incredibly loud. It's loud and rattling and stuff like that. But at least it does. The air conditioner does work, and then there are a few benefits compared to the room. I'm saying the room in Sumatra was better for me because it was so much cheaper, but there were a lot of things missing. So, for example, here in this room, it is more expensive, but it's it's not bigger, but it is a little bit more nicely furnished with a wardrobe. There's a little wooden desk with a stool. There's no actual chair, which I find really annoying. I always think, what's the point of a stool? I need a chair with a backrest. The bedding is a bit nicer than in Sumatra, and there is an actual shower in the bathroom. My room in Sumatra didn't have a shower. There's just a garbage can, and you fill the garbage can with water, and then you take a big ladle and dump water on your head, and it's cold water coming straight out of the tap. And here, there's a shower and a water heater. So if you're in the mood, you can have a hot water shower, which I generally don't do because it's so hot here anyway. Cold water feels nice, so I don't often use these hot water heaters, but it does have it if you want. And I could feel the difference in the water quality because in Sumatra, whatever happened, wherever the water is coming from, it's very salty, I think. Anyway, when I dump water on my body in these cheap hotels in Tanjung Balai, it never feels like it rinses away the soap because it's salty water, I think. It's not pure fresh water. And then your skin ends up feeling kind of slippery and sticky. And then here, I could feel it right away. I turned on the shower and the water hit me. It was like, oh, that's actual pure fresh water, even though we're right beside the ocean. And then when I soaped up, I could feel the fresh water rinsing away the soap. And then I felt cleaner afterwards. My skin didn't have this slick, slippery feeling like it does in Tanjung Balai. And Wi-Fi. My room at the Malahayati Hotel in Sumatra, because they did have good Wi-Fi as it turned out, but it just didn't reach my room. So my room was too far away from the router. But here there is Wi-Fi, and it was still registered in memory on all my devices, so I didn't have to do anything. All I did was turn on my phone and switch to the Seafront Hotel Wi-Fi signal, and it just started working. So I have Wi-Fi on all my phones and a tablet and things like that. But yeah, now that I've been here one night, I've totally adjusted to this room, and was like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. I just wish it was cheaper. I prefer the prices in Sumatra. I guess that's not exactly a revolutionary thing to say. It's like, yeah, I prefer the place that has a lower price. So that is the hotel story. And going back in time, I booked it in advance when I was still in Tanjung Balai, when I was still in Sumatra. I planned ahead. And as it turned out, it was kind of funny. I guess with my friend KY, we miscommunicated, which is I have miscommunication with people all the time. I must be very poor at communicating or something, but I always seem to get misunderstood, or messaging gets all mixed up. But it turns out that since KY has a house here and he has friends here, he was thinking, I don't need to stay in a hotel. I could just show up and he'll meet me at the dock, and then I can stay somewhere else. But somehow that message got lost in the mix, and I wasn't aware of this possibility, so I just got onto Agoda and looked, and I booked this room and paid for it in advance. And I had one other experience in Sumatra, which was kind of interesting because I knew KY was coming to meet me at the dock. And then in order for us to meet, it'd be nice to be able to communicate. Like, oh, like if the boat is delayed or what time I arrive, it would be nice to be able to communicate. But normally when you arrive in a new country, you don't have any way to communicate yet. You don't have data, your SIM card isn't active yet, all these sorts of things. But of course, I do have my old Malaysian SIM card, and it was still good. I had it packed away. I stored it because when I went to Indonesia, I swapped it out of my phone, right? I removed my Malaysian SIM card and put in my new Indonesian SIM card. And then when I came back here, my idea was just to swap them. But my data was gone. It had expired while I was in Sumatra. But of course, the way the system works, you can't, even if you have credit on your account, you can't buy more data unless you're already connected. It's a catch-22 situation. I want to buy a data package so I can connect to Wi-Fi and mobile internet. But in order to buy the data, I already have to have Wi-Fi and a data and a mobile connection. So you're still stuck until you get to a hotel, and then you can connect to the hotel's Wi-Fi, and then now that you're on Wi-Fi, then you can buy your data in order to get connected to mobile internet. It's sort of a catch-22 you run into all the time. And before anyone says, oh, why don't you get an eSIM? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I can't. None of my phones will accept eSIMs anyway. I would have to upgrade to a more modern phone to get an eSIM. And I don't even know if that would even help, though, to be honest, because I don't really understand how eSIMs work, but my understanding is, well, that's the SIM card, but the SIM card still has to connect to a local telecom provider. It's not a telecom company, it's a SIM card. It's like a broker, right? It's like a middle manager. So now you bought your eSIM, but you still have to connect to a local telecom provider. So if you have an eSIM to come into Malaysia, well, you still have to connect to Digi, or I can't remember the names of the other companies now. But yeah, you still have to get your mobile internet from a local company, and your eSIM has to connect with one of those companies. So I still don't know whether that makes... I think you still have to have Wi-Fi in order to buy a data package, or I don't know. I've never had an eSIM. But while I was sitting there in Sumatra, I thought, well, you know what? I still have, because I have a Digi SIM. I have my SIM card is from the Malaysian company Digi, and I have the Digi SIM, but I also have a Digi app. I have the app on my phone, and I have the Malaysian Touch and Go eWallet. And I thought, even though I'm not in Malaysia, I wonder if it's possible while I'm in Sumatra to transfer money from my eWallet to Digi, and then on Digi buy a data package while I have Wi-Fi in Sumatra. And then as soon as I arrive in Malaysia, I'll be ready to go. I put in my SIM card, boom, I'll have a data package, and I don't have to worry about anything. And to my amazement, it worked. I thought it wouldn't work because when I tried to use Touch and Go in Indonesia before, it wouldn't let me. It said only Malaysians are allowed to use their international services. Foreigners, they can tell I'm a foreigner because of when I set up my account, they needed my passport number and that sort of thing. So they knew I was a Canadian, and so I get a limited version of the Touch and Go services. I can use it in Malaysia, but I can't use it outside of Malaysia per se. But it turns out I can. And I was able to transfer money from my Touch and Go e-wallet. Planet Doug subscribers, one in particular, has been helping me out a lot by transferring money into my touch and go e-wallet. So my account gets replenished from time to time, which I appreciate very, very much. It has helped me out tremendously over the last couple of years, ever since I got my e-wallet. So even though I was in Sumatra, my e-wallet, my Malaysian e-wallet had credit in it that a Planet Doug subscriber had put there for me, and I was able to use that credit to transfer it to my Digi account. And once the money was in Digi, then I was able to buy a data package. And then once I had that, I thought, maybe this will work. And then as my ferry got close to the shore, the coast of Malaysia, from time to time we were close enough to pick up a tiny, tiny bit of a mobile signal, and I noticed that it was working. And then as soon as I arrived at the dock and I had a full connection, boom, I had data and I was all connected. And I was able to send messages to KY. As I got close to shore on the ferry, I started getting messages from him saying, yeah, so like, when are you going to get here? Are you at the dock yet? Et cetera, et cetera. And I was able to communicate with him. And then we were able to meet up at the dock, which was very cool. Yeah, modern days, all this internet stuff, SIM card, e-wallets, apps, you really have to stay on top of that in order to take advantage of all this stuff. And it's really, really helpful. I know that a lot of people yearn for the good old days. I have this conversation quite a bit, particularly when it comes to Google Maps. For some reason, again, amongst old school people like myself who remember the days, who lived through the days, pre-internet days, and then all we had were paper maps. People remember those days fondly and kind of don't like the modern era of Google Maps. And they'll even talk about how they don't want to use it. They love to go out and not use Google Maps. And I'm the exact opposite when it comes to Google Maps. I love Google Maps. It's my absolute favorite thing for many, many reasons. I mean, I remember using paper maps, but all I remember is, okay, there's a nostalgia feeling to it, but it's really just a giant pain in the butt because you got to find the map to begin with. And most of the time you can't get one. Google Maps is available to everyone worldwide. It's always there, but you arrive in a brand new country. Where are you going to get your map before you land in that country? You think you're going to go to a bookstore in your small town in Canada and find a detailed road map of Sumatra? No, obviously not. So you really have to work really hard to find detailed paper maps. I remember ordering online from bookstores, like trying to get the Michelin maps for various countries that I was going to, because Michelin maps were the best. They were the gold standard for international maps. But you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and you have to order them in advance, and you have to order them through the mail. And then every time you go to a new region or a new country, well, you got to get a new map. And quite often, if you go to a normal store, any map they sell, paper map, is going to be like the whole country, and all they show you are the main highways. That's all you can see, and you're not going to get a city map. So even inside the city, you're still going to be completely lost. Or you might be able to find a tourism map. These are often the only maps you could get, and those maps are just horrible. All they showed you were giant graphics of the local tourist attractions, and then very little else. So Google Maps is like, for all those reasons, is like 1,000,000% better than an old paper map, despite the nostalgia. And on top of all of that, a paper map is completely useless if you don't know where you are. You have to know your current location on that map for the map to be of any use to you. So most of the time, I'd be out wandering around. I remember being, you're lost all the time. And maybe that's what people are missing. They're not really missing how much the map helped them, but what they're missing is the way the map was of no use to them at all. So they were lost all the time trying to get directions, and that added to the sense of adventure, to the sense of fun. And I guess it was an adventure, but all I remember is just how limiting it was and how you were lost all the time. You didn't dare go very far away from your hotel because you're in the middle of some African city, and then you take one wrong corner, boom, you have no idea how to get back to your hotel. You're completely lost. And you're looking at your map, trying to figure out where you are and where your hotel is and how to get there. And you just can't do it because you need to know your location for the map to be of any use to you. So back in those days, of course, we all had our ways of dealing with this. I would always get, if I could, get a business card from the hotel. You always had to remember to do that because if you get really, really lost, you can always just get a taxi or a local tuk-tuk or something like that, and you show the driver the business card from that hotel. He can see the name of it. At least you have a chance of getting back home again. That's one thing I would always do. And you would make careful mental notes, like leaving breadcrumbs. You go out to go exploring, and then you leave your hotel, you're walking, you get to the corner, you look back at the hotel, okay, that's where it is. I turn left at the giant palm tree, and then you walk for another 3 or 4 blocks, and you turn right, and you look back and go, okay, there's a big building there. It looks like a bank. I have to turn left at the bank. And you just make a mental note of how to get back to your hotel, and you just keep track of everywhere you go. And normally it doesn't do any good. And then, of course, you're going to get lost anyway. And then you start asking local people for directions. And, of course, nobody can help you, really. Nobody, nobody knows the directions. People point in 4 different directions at the same time. You get conflicting information from everybody you talk to. So anyway, the days of paper maps were not as rosy as people like to tell me, at least for me. I'm a big fan of Google Maps because it also gives you courage and the freedom to go anywhere you want. You're out riding your bike, you don't even have to think. You just go riding, and anything that looks interesting to you, oh, what's down this road? Go down that road for 5 kilometers. Oh, what's down this road? Go down that road for 3 kilometers. Turn 1,000 different corners, go into any tiny alleyways you want, go to the river, leave the road completely, go off-road, get on a boat, cross a river, do anything you want all day long. And at the end of the day, it makes no difference. You just look at Google Maps. Oh, here I am. And then there's the blue dot. The blue dot tells you where you are, and you can see exactly how to get back to your hotel. I mean, what is wrong with that? It gives you the courage and the freedom to really go exploring. And I remember not having that freedom in the old paper map days. Well, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. I guess I was talking about the modern world of apps and e-wallets and things like that, and how they're essential now. You can't really ignore them if you're going to new countries. You might decide to be old school and say, well, I'm not going to use my smartphone and I'm not going to use Google Maps. But quite often you'll run into a problem because the companies you're dealing with expect you to have these things. And so, like, to do anything, like to do with restaurants, train tickets, bus tickets, airlines, anything at all, hotels, they will ask for your WhatsApp account. And then you have to connect with them on WhatsApp or email or something, or phone number. If you don't have a local phone number, you run into all kinds of dead ends. And now when you show up places like, I was just chatting with a friend of mine about my going to Jakarta, because he went there recently, and then I'm asking him, okay, there's this train that goes from the airport to downtown. What's that train like? Just tell me about the train. And one thing he told me is, well, yeah, you can't buy a ticket because money, you can't buy a ticket with money anymore. You have to have some kind of a e-wallet or debit card, or if you don't have that, you have to pay with a credit card. And I ran into that when I went to Medan, and they have this amazing airport train, which is really good value and a lot of fun to take. And I landed there on my last trip, and then I was stuck. I couldn't buy a ticket because there's no ticket window. There's only a machine, and the machine only takes e-wallets and debit cards. And of course, I don't have any of those for Indonesia. At that time, anyway, I didn't. And then I wanted to buy a train ticket from Medan to Tanjung Balai back then. And then I went to the train station to buy a ticket. Like, isn't that the most logical thing in the world? I want to take a train this coming Saturday. So I go to the train station physically to buy the ticket. And then I got up to the ticket window and they wouldn't sell me one. They said, no, you can't buy a ticket here at the station. You have to buy it through our app. That's the only way to get a ticket now for what I wanted to do. And it's just absolutely insane. There's a human being at the ticket counter with a computer in front of her. You're at the train station. You want to buy a ticket for a train, and then she tells you, no, I can't do it for you. The only way you can get a ticket is through one of our online systems. I mean, that's just the way the world is now. So then I had to download the local Indonesian train app, open an account, and then figure out how to reserve a seat on a train. And then once you do, then you have to pay for it. How are you going to pay for it? And then you go down a whole wilderness. And luckily, there's often an option where you can just take your phone to a local 7-Eleven, something like that, like a convenience store, and then you can pay for your train ticket at the convenience store, which in some ways is so insane that, for me to buy a train ticket in Indonesia, I had to go to like 7-Eleven to get it. I couldn't get it at the train station. I mean, that's the modern world. It's so crazy. But I got all that figured out, as I said, with my eWallet and my Digi account and my, so I was all set to go. So I got that set up in advance. I had the hotel booked here in Malaysia in advance. And the other thing I needed to do was get to the dock. And that turned into a big adventure. And I was telling this story on video when I was on the ferry. I told this story talking into my smartphone. But I'll repeat the story here just in case you haven't heard it or that video never sees the light of day. Yeah, it goes way back in time because I went to the Indo Mall Fast Ferry office to buy my ticket for the ferry. It cost 650,000 rupiah, and then I got the VIP upgrade for 50,000, so the total was 700,000, which I think is like $42 US one way to go from Tanjung Balai to Port Dickson. So I got the ticket. That was no problem. The ticket clerk was very friendly, very helpful. She remembered me from previous trips, and she spoke enough English. And with the help of her English and my use of Google Translate, we were able to get through this. And then I found out that the ferry left at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they wanted me at the dock at 5 a.m., 2 hours before. To be honest, for this boat, you don't really have to show up 2 hours early, but that's what they tell you. And if you do get there at 5, it means you're out the door of your hotel at 4:30 a.m. at the latest. So how are you going to get to the dock? And my hotel was a little bit out of the city, and there's a ton of traffic there during the day. But it's not like it's not a fancy hotel. The last time I did this, I was staying at the Grand Singhi Hotel, which is a much fancier hotel. And Becak drivers are waiting outside the Grand Singhi 24 hours a day. So you just step outside, boom. There's a guy, he's sleeping in his Becak waiting for customers. They're out there all the time because they know people who have a bit more money are staying at the Grand Singhi and they want to hire a Becak to go places. So they're always there. But at my hotel, a low budget one, I wasn't sure whether there'd be anybody out there or not. And I didn't want to get stuck because, you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, leaving the hotel at 4:30 and it's pitch black. And now I've got to get 8 kilometers to the dock. And my visa is expiring the next day. I can't miss this boat. It could be pouring rain. There could be all kinds of problems. So I thought maybe there's an easier way to do this. And I asked the ticket clerk, so do you have any kind of a hotel pickup service? Because I knew they did from before. going way back in time when I was staying at the Grand Singi, I asked them about this back then, and they says, yes, sir, we can pick you up at your hotel. And we made all the arrangements. What hotel? Where are you staying? Oh, Grand Singi. So be in the lobby at this time, and then an Indo Mall van will come and then pick you up and take you to the dock. And I don't know if there was even a charge for it. It might even have been a free service. So I said, oh, that's amazing. That's great. Why don't we do that? And then at that time, they abandoned me. They completely forgot about me. I was in the lobby at some, whatever time in the morning it was, 5 a.m., waiting for them, and they never showed up. The van never came. They just completely forgot about me. So I waited as long as I could, thinking maybe they're just running late, but eventually I had to give up on them. I sent them a ton of messages, but there was no reply. And then I just got a paycheck, and I paid the guy 70,000 rupiah, something like that, to take me to the dock. And everything worked out fine. And it was kind of fun to do because when I was in the Baychak, I shot some 360 video and some GoPro video, stuff like that. It was fun to take. But yeah, they completely forgot about me and all. And then days and days and days later, I was back in Malaysia. And then I finally got a message from the company, and then it was an apology. So we're very sorry, sir. I forgot to tell the driver to come get you. Like we talked about it, we made the arrangements, but then she never wrote it down in their system, or she never told the driver, and they just completely forgot about me. So that was my experience with their hotel pickup service from before. They said they did it, and then I signed up for it, and then they forgot about me. So this time I asked her again, so this hotel pickup service, can we do that this time? And then she said she didn't know. I gave her the name card of my hotel, the Malahayati, and I said, okay, this is where I'm staying, and I'd love a hotel pickup if we can arrange for that. And then she said, well, she will find out. She'll talk to some people. She wasn't, for some reason, she didn't know. She worked at the company, but she had no idea whether this could happen or not. And she says, well, I'll find out for you, and then I'll let you know what's going on. And of course, we are talking about Indonesia here, about Sumatra. And as much as I love the place, when someone tells you they're going to do something, well, you can't really believe them. Half the time you misunderstood what they were talking about, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they just completely forget. And I really noticed the contrast because I came from Vietnam to Malaysia to Sumatra, and then Vietnam was like a highlight of customer service for me. Just blows away every other country I've been to in the last few years. Just the customer service there was on a completely other level. The professionalism of the staff everywhere, the attention to detail was incredible. It surprised me. It was so good, it shocked me most of the time. And when someone in Vietnam at a hotel or a restaurant, a bus company, they said they were going to do something, they did it. And they would go above and beyond your expectations. And they would do it earlier than they said they were going to do it. And they would do it better than they said they were going to do it. I had perfect confidence in people in Vietnam. But in Sumatra, this woman said, okay, I'll find out about this hotel pickup, and then I'll let you know. And we were connected on WhatsApp. She knew me. She'd seen me before. There was no problem communicating with me. And of course, I never heard from her. She said she would do this, and then she just didn't bother to do it. And that's kind of par for the course for a lot of people and a lot of things in Sumatra. It's still living a little bit in the wild, wild west of organization and systems. Things don't always work. So I never heard from them. I waited day after day after day, and I never got this message. And then the day of my ferry was getting closer, so I thought, well, I hate to do it, but I'm going to start bugging them. I don't like bugging people. If people say they're going to do something, I usually just let them do it, and or not do it. It's up to them. But in this case, I thought it'd be really nice to get hotel pickup, so it would make my day a lot easier. So I finally sent the Indomall company a message and said, hi, this is Douglas. Remember me? I'm taking the ferry to Malaysia on Saturday, November 23rd, like tomorrow morning. And I'm still waiting to hear whether you can come pick me up at my hotel. What's going on with that? Can you let me know? And then I got a message. I think it might have been from the same woman, but I can't tell. But it's the Indomall Fast Ferry business account. So it could have been anyone in the office, but I think it was the same woman that I'd spoken to and I bought my ticket from. And then she replied to my question and said, yes, we do have this pickup and drop off service, but not for you. Your hotel is too far away. It said your hotel is too far away and it's in the wrong direction. The hotel has to be between our office and the dock, and yours is in the other direction. So no, we can't come get you. And of course, I found that annoying for a couple of reasons. The main reason I found it annoying is that, well, we're not talking about a metropolis. I'm not in KL, I'm not in Saigon, I'm not 20 kilometers away. I'm just up the road. Tanjung Balai is a city, but it's a small city. I walk into downtown from my hotel. I mean, I ride my bike everywhere. It's not a big place, and you're telling me my hotel is in the wrong direction. So she basically told me, yes, we have this hotel pickup drop-off service, but not for you. Because, had I been staying in the expensive Grand Singi Hotel, they would come get me. But since I'm living in a cheaper, low-budget hotel that is in the wrong part of town, no, they won't come get me. So anyway, I wrote back to her and I says, well, okay, thanks for letting me know. For one thing, thank you for getting back to me. I appreciate that. And I did say, I do find your policy a little bit puzzling because you're telling me that, yeah, okay, we pick people up and take them to the dock, but only certain people. You have to stay in certain hotels. And I probably wouldn't even have said anything except she already told me she was going to let me know. She was going to find out and tell me, and then she failed completely on that. So that was her first failure. So now the second failure is, well, okay, she didn't fight for me. I feel like she should, since we know each other so well, she should have pushed. Okay, come on, let's go get this guy. Let's pick him up. And it's how far away is it? It's like a couple kilometers. And let's go pick him up. It's 4:30 in the morning. He's a foreigner. He doesn't speak the local language. Let's help him out. Throw him a bone, and let's use our hotel pickup service to go get him. But no, they just told me, no dice. You're staying at the wrong hotel. You are a low-budget person, so you don't get this service from our company. So that was her, second message. She told me that, she told me, no, we can't come to your hotel. And then I wrote back to her and said, okay, thank you, but that is very confusing to me. I don't know why you would pick people up at some hotels, but not other hotels. And then she replied to that message with a completely different story. And now she says, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, sir, but we don't pick people up at hotels. We do not have a hotel pickup and drop-off service. So her story had completely changed. She said, yeah, we do have this service, but we can't come to your hotel. And I questioned that policy. Now she said, no, we don't do that. We don't go to hotels. All we do, people, as she explained it, if you come to our office, then we can drive you from our office to the dock. And then I was like, oh, for Pete's sake. Well, why didn't you tell me that? We could have avoided all of this confusion. I was in your office speaking with you in person for a long time, and then we're sending messages back and forth. And all this time, you knew that, well, okay, we do have a service, but we take people from our office, our ticket office, to the dock. So you would, and it's like, okay, well, why didn't you say that? It's like, for Pete's sake. It's not hard. It doesn't take a genius to figure these things out. And when I was chatting with this woman earlier doing my small talk thing, I found out that she never gets a day off. She works 7 days a week, never had a holiday, and she's worked there for 2 years. So for 2 years, she has been in that office every single day for 2 years straight. And you think after that kind of work experience, At some point, you would figure out a few tricks of the trade when it comes to customer service, such as offer some customer service, right? I mean, it's like, come on. I mean, you must know your policy is, well, we drive people from our office to the dock. And she knew that clearly, and it never occurred to her, despite us talking about this issue endlessly in person and online, it never occurred to her to tell me this. So again, I wrote back to her and said, okay, I see. Now I understand. But if this is the system, you only bring people from your office. I wish you had told me that from the beginning. Then we could have avoided all of this trouble, all of this hassle. And then she wrote back, and I'm very sorry, sir, that you are disappointed in us and our company. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am disappointed. It's like, but the thing is, what the theme that started building in my head was, okay, we had this crazy miscommunication, poor customer service. I have no idea what's going on. And I started to reflect on how much this has dominated my life, because I've spent the majority of my life in countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, places in Africa, South America, wherever. And even if the country is more organized and has better customer service like Vietnam, you're still dealing with a local culture that I don't understand, and you're dealing with a language barrier. So my entire life I've been living in this fog of never understanding anything that's going on. And now in my interaction with this woman at Indo Mall Fast Ferry, I had no idea what happened. It's like, why was this so hard? Why was this so complicated? Why does the story change every time I talk to this woman? And I realized I'm going to go to my grave and I will never know what happened. I will never know the truth. I could go to the office, sit down with this woman, we could have a cup of coffee, we could have a team of translators and interpreters, and we could have a 2-hour discussion, and I want to find out exactly, okay, why didn't you say this at this point? Why didn't you answer my question here? Why did the story change 3 times? At the end of 2 hours of talking about it, I still won't know what happened. It's just the way it is. And you have to learn to accept that you will never understand what's going on. In retrospect, you'll never be able to figure it out. And if you want to be happy in a place like Indonesia, you just have to learn to accept it. Just, okay, my goal is to get to the dock, to get on my ferry. And eventually I will accomplish that. Then you should just be happy that you made it to the dock. How you got there, all the details, you'll never understand anything that was going on. And you just have to accept it. Otherwise, you're going to have a stroke. Your blood pressure is going to go up, your stress levels, and you're just going to have a heart attack at some point. You just have to adopt a Zen attitude and let it go. Because that was just the beginning. So now, of course, I had to get to the dock on my own. And that was a bit of a challenge. This was a Friday night. And oddly enough, like the night before the ferry, Friday night is a huge night in Tanjung Balai. I've noticed this pattern there. I mean, Friday night is the holy day. It's the holy day of the week. Bigger mosque. Attendance, people go for Friday prayers. In Christianity, of course, Sunday is the holy day, but in Islam, it's Friday. So you have this day where a lot of businesses are closed and people go to the mosque and do all these things. And yet at night, the city just blows up. It goes crazy for some reason. And the road outside the Malahayati Hotel turns into a drag strip. It turns into a crazy place. Massive amounts of traffic. I don't know where people are going because that road goes out into the countryside. It just heads out into farming districts. So I don't know why, but man, the roar of traffic that Friday night was unbelievable. It was so loud. And my room at the Malahayati Hotel is on a balcony overlooking the road. And I guess I've been sleeping okay there, but because I was a little bit stressed out. I'm thinking about the next day. I'm moving, changing countries. I got to go through immigration. I got to go to customs. I have to get to the ferry dock. There's a lot going on, so your brain is on high alert. It's harder to fall asleep. And now I had this traffic roar that was unbelievable. It was so loud that Friday night. And I don't know why. I don't know, like Friday night seems to be party night, which is kind of odd when you think about it. But anyway, I had almost zero sleep. I tried and I tried and I tried to sleep. But as soon as I set my alarm, I went to bed quite early. I made plans to go to bed really, really early. And I wanted to be ready to go, like fully packed the night before, but I wanted to wake up at 3 a.m. so I can have a cup of coffee in my room, do some last minute thinking. Okay, I've got my passport, I've done this. You have to do the Malaysian digital arrival card, make sure I've got that. I need money, SIM cards, data. I needed to get everything ready. So I don't like to rush, is what I'm saying. So even though I don't have to leave the hotel until 4:30, I want to get up at 3. Other people, maybe they're going to get up at 4 a.m. or even get up at 4:30 and then have half an hour to brush their teeth and get out the door at 5 and then get to the dock an hour late or something. But I can't do that. I like to do things slowly. I like to enjoy the process, and I don't like to feel rushed. So I set my alarm for 3, and then as soon as I set my alarm for 3, I had no hope of getting any sleep because now I'm aware of when I need to get up. And because of the roar of traffic and everything going on, I really got no sleep at all for the entire night. And then the alarm never went off because I was awake already the whole night. I'm just sort of leaning over, looking at my phone, going, oh, okay, it's 1 o'clock. Now it's 1:30. Now it's 2. Now it's 2:30. And I got 2:45. I just got up, turned on the light, took a shower, brushed my teeth, shaved, and just started the process. So yeah, I had no sleep at all. And then I left my room. I was all packed up. Packing was a little bit of a challenge because I'm in Sumatra with a bicycle and all my luggage is geared to a bicycle. But now I'm returning to Malaysia for a week. And of course, I'm not going to bring my bicycle with me. So I needed another bag. And all I had was sort of this weird plastic thing, a luggage bag that people use. And yeah, it was really weird to pack. Anyway, I packed up and I had this weird little bundle. And then I wrapped it up with a rope just to make it tighter and smaller and easier to handle. Like what I'm saying is I didn't have a backpack. I didn't have a suitcase. I didn't really have a convenient piece of luggage. So I had to sort of come up with my own version of luggage. And then I left my room. Everything was fine. And then I was kind of pleased to see that there was, like, the doors weren't locked. A lot of hotels overseas, low budget hotels, will lock you in at night for security reasons. And then when you if you're leaving early in the morning, now you find the doors are locked. You can't get out. And now you have to go find somebody. You got to wake somebody up, and it can turn into a huge hassle. But in this case, the doors were open. They were closed, but not locked. And then when I opened the door, it creaked and made a sound. And there was a young man sleeping outside the lobby on a bench, wrapped up in a blanket, and he heard the door creak and he opened his eyes. And then he got up, and I got very good customer service from him. He took the key to my room, so I said to him, yep, check out, and gave him the key. I'd never seen this guy before, so I'm not sure if he knew who I was or what was going on, because in the days leading up to this, I've been talking to everybody in the hotel about my plans, because I left my bicycle at the hotel, and I left my big bicycle trailer fully packed. I left it at the hotel, and I had to make arrangements with them, tell them, okay, I'm leaving for a week, but can I leave my bike here, and I'll be back 1 week from now, et cetera, et cetera. So I made all these arrangements. Everybody knew all about me. But now that I was actually leaving, there was a brand new guy there. I was like, oh, I hope he knows who I am, and this doesn't turn into a problem. But then he was actually looking at me a little bit expectantly, like he was willing to help me out more. It's like, oh, So is there anything else I can do for you, sir? He had that look on his face. So I was just going to go to the road and wait for a Baychak to go by and wave it down. I didn't know how long I'd have to wait. I was hoping there'd be a Baychak in the parking lot, because the manager of the hotel indicated to me that there's always a Baychak driver here. So there will be somebody waiting in the parking lot. The guy will be sleeping in the Baychak, so don't worry about it. Just, wake him up, and that's what he's there for. But when I left the hotel, there was nobody there. There were no Baychak, and the road was completely empty. There was no traffic at all. I guess everybody was exhausted from the Indianapolis 500 the night before, and there were no Baychak anywhere in sight. I looked up and down the road, none of them. There was nobody on the move, and I thought, oh boy, how am I going to get to the dock? This is not looking good. But then I turned to the hotel clerk and I told him in Indonesian. I typed out on Google Translate, I need to go to the ferry dock, Teluk Nibung, and a Baychak. I need a Baychak. And then he went to the street. So he says, oh, okay, I can do that for you, sir. And then he went to the street, and then he was looking up and down. He was looking for a Baychak for me. He took on the responsibility of getting one for me. But there were none on the road, and then he got out his phone, and he started making phone calls and contacting people. And I guess he was trying to rustle up a Baychak for me. And while he was doing that, a Baychak actually came up the road, had a passenger in the Baychak, and then he slowed down and stopped and talked to the hotel clerk and talked to him. And then the guy indicated, yeah. I saw some like smiles and thumbs up and yeah. So they were making arrangements to take me. And the guy just said he had to drop off his passenger, but he'll turn around and come back. And then when he came back, the hotel clerk again went out to talk to him and confirmed with the driver the price. So he did the negotiation for me, and he came back and he typed out on my phone 35,000 rupiah to go to the dock. And I was really surprised about that, because I thought the minimum price was 50,000. That's what everyone told me. To go to the dock, it costs 50,000. And then I thought maybe at 4:30 in the morning, they've got me over a barrel. They're going to ask for more. Because I remember when I did this the last time, the guy asked for, the hotel told me it cost 50. And then when I went outside the Grand Singhi, the Baychak driver said 100,000. Double what even at the Grand Singhi, they kind of told me, well, for the foreigner price is 50,000. So that's what they'll ask you for. For local people, it's cheaper. But for you, it's going to be double. So you're going to be paying 50,000. So I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. And then the driver said 100,000. And I don't usually bargain. But in this case, it was a little bit annoying. So the last time from the Grand Singhi, when the guy said 100,000, I kind of gave him a look and I said, oh, come on, dude. Then I bargained a little bit and said, how about, they told me in the hotel, they said 50,000 was the price. And then he came back with something else. And I think we settled on 70,000 or 60 or 70 or something like that. But in this case, the guy said 35,000, which I guess is the local price, the normal price. Though, to be honest, the hotel clerk, he told me the normal price was 25,000 to go to the dock, 25,000. And then the driver saw that I was a foreigner, so he raised it a bit and said, okay, 35,000. And I saw that, and I was like surprised. Like I was expecting 100 or 200,000 or something. And the guy said 35. I said, oh, sure, no problem. And right from the jump, I just assumed I'd give him more, because 35,000 rupees is not a lot of money for a long trip like that. It seemed too low even to me, so I just assumed I'd give him 50 and call it a day. So I got in the Baychak, and off we went. Fun ride, really exciting. And that's when I decided to start shooting video on my phone, because the scenery around me was so interesting with the early morning activity in the markets and stuff like that. So I was shooting some video. And then on the way to the dock, he pulled over at a little shop. And it was one of those places that had 1.5 liter water bottles filled with gas. And that's what they use for gas stations there. where you don't generally go to a gas station. You just go to a shop and they have all these water bottles filled with gas, and you buy it by the liter. And then they take the bottle and they pour the gas into your gas tank. So he pulled over there and he was indicating to me, he's like, yeah, we're not going to make it. The gas tank is empty, so we need to buy some gas. And he turned to me when they got there, and he's asking for the gas. He turned to me and made them like rubbing finger and thumb together, the international symbol for money. So he looked at me and kind of went, money? Like, do you think you can cover this as well? And I was like, okay, sure, fine. Normally, of course, that would be covered by the $35,000. When you hire a taxi to take you somewhere, there isn't a gas. You don't have to fill the gas tank at the same time. That's included in the fare, right? That's normal. But obviously, this is no big deal, and it's all part of the adventure. And so I said, oh, yeah, I can pay that. And how much? It was 6,000 rupiah for 1 liter. To be honest, I was expecting him to fill the tank. He's got me on the hook for gas, and I just assumed he was going to just buy 5 bottles. I don't know what his tank holds on his motorbike, but probably somewhere between 2 and 5 liters. I don't know. But anyway, he only put in 1 liter. And then he did this really interesting thing. I wish I had it on video, but I don't, where he poured in 1 liter, and now the gas tank was open, like the gas cap had been removed. But rather than put the cap back on, he leaned over and put his mouth over the entire opening to get a good seal. And then he blew as hard as he could, like he really, really expelled his lungs, like blowing air into the gas tank. And I assume the idea was the gas tank was practically empty, so he was worried that the new gas was not going to make it to the carburetor and into the pistons, that there's going to be an air bubble in there. So he needed to blow air into the tank and force the gas into the lines. So like basically kickstart the feed of the fuel into the engine. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Anyway, we put the cap back on, and away we went. So the next part of the adventure, we arrived at the dock. It was 8 kilometers door to door. I'd ridden my bike that distance, so I knew. And I knew that at the ferry dock, they have a gate. And any vehicle to go into the dock area, you have to pay 5,000 rupiah. And then they raise the gate, and you're allowed in. And I've done this in the past. If you take a becak, you as the customer, you have to pay that 5,000 rupiah. And I knew this, so I had 5,000 ready. I already had the money out of my wallet, and I had it in my hand because I didn't want to be fumbling with my wallet at the time. That's a recipe. That's a recipe for losing your wallet. So I always get money out in advance. So I had it 5,000 rupiah in my hand waiting. So we pull up at this place, and then the guy looks at us, and he's indicating he needs the money. So I hand him the 5,000 rupiah. And then for some reason, the guy looked at the bill and he looked, no, this isn't right. And I'm wondering, okay, is there a foreigner price here as well? And then he was communicating with me in Indonesian. He was holding up fingers and he was saying, no, it's 8,000. He said that in English eventually. Between him and the becak driver, They summoned up their knowledge of English numbers, and the guy finally said 8,000. So I thought, oh, okay, 8,000. The price has gone up since last time. So he handed me back my 5,000. I gave him a 10,000 rupiah note to pay for the 8,000. And he looked at that 10,000 note and he said, well, he didn't say, he indicated, no, this isn't right either. And then between him and the becak driver, they came up with 18,000. It's not 8,000, it's 18. And actually, my becak driver said 80. So he said 80,000. And I was like, oh, come on. That's way, even I know, I'm not that dumb. I'm dumb. I'm super dummy foreigner here, but I'm not that dumb. I know it doesn't cost 80,000 rupiah to get through this gate. Like, give me a break. But I guess he just got his numbers wrong. But the guy was trying to tell me 18,000. And he indicated, okay, I gave him a 10,000 rupiah note. He needs one more. So he needs 2 10,000 rupiah notes to get 18,000. So I thought, oh, okay, whatever. That didn't seem right to me, but I got to get on this boat. I can't waste, I don't want to waste time bargaining over 8,000 rupiah. So I got out another 10,000 rupiah note and I gave it to him. So now he's holding 20,000 rupiah, two 10,000 rupiah notes. And there's a machine there, and he took out a debit card of some kind. He scanned the card, which paid the fee. And then he turned back to me, handed me a receipt plus 15,000 in change. So if you follow the logic there, I gave him 20 for some reason. He gave me 15,000 in change, so I paid him 5,000 rupiah. And the ticket, when I looked at it, said 5,000 rupiah. So I had been right from the very beginning, which again raises the question of what happened? What was going on? What were we talking about this whole time? The ticket says 5,000. He wanted 5,000. I gave him 5,000 at the beginning, and then he wouldn't take it. He handed it back to me and said, no, not 5,000, 8,000. And we talked about this for a long time because we had the language barrier. It was pretty clear. No, that's not enough. You have to pay 8,000. So I give him 8,000, and then he says, no, it's 18,000. So I give him 20,000, and then he gives me 15,000 change, which amounts to me paying 5,000. And the receipt said 5,000. So it's like, what? You know, my poor brain is just spinning at this point. Like, what happened? I had no understanding at all about what had just taken place. What were we talking about? Why, if the ticket actually cost 5,000 and I gave you 5,000, why didn't you just take it right from the beginning? It was just so crazy. And again, the whole interaction with the Indomall fast ferry person about hotel pickup, I said, I will go to my grave and I will never understand what we were talking about. Same thing with this gate going into the dock. I can live for 1,000 years. I can sit down with a translator and have a long 2-hour conversation with him, the ticket taker, and I will never, ever understand what happened, what he was thinking, what was going on. It will remain a mystery for the entirety of my life. And that's just the fog that you live in when you spend time in a place like Sumatra. It's part of the adventure, but man, it sure ages you as well. I feel like I aged a year in one day yesterday because of all of this. Because I'm not over it. It's not over yet. The story continues. Trust me, it continues. So now we had paid the 5,000, and then we drove in. And then, of course, the becak driver turned to me and said, give me 100,000. So now the price went up. It started 35,000. That's what he said at the hotel. And then I had to pay for the gas on top of that. So cool. And now I planned on giving him 50 or 60 or whatever I was going to dig out of my wallet to give him a good tip on top of the 35,000. And then, but no, he said now 100,000 rupiah. And he was pretty adamant about it. And I just kind of looked at him with a sad look on my face. It was like, oh, dude, come on. Are we going to do this now? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you making my life miserable? Because I like being a nice guy. I hate being the bad guy. Now he's asking for 100,000 rupiah, and now I'm put in the position where I'm going to have to be the rude foreigner arguing with him and negotiating about the price, and we're going to get into a big argument about how much. It's like, I don't like to live that way. And I was instantly thinking, well, 100,000 is a perfectly fair price for this. It's not a huge amount of money. I would be happy paying 100,000, but why didn't you say 100,000 at the hotel? We negotiated the price. I had an Indonesian speaker doing the negotiation for me. He spoke to you in your language, and the two of you negotiated the price, and you decided 35,000. And the whole time you knew you were going to try to scam me when you got to the dock. But you don't need to. Just say, if he had said 100,000 at the hotel, I would have said, absolutely, fine, let's go. I wanted to get to the dock. It's 4:30 in the morning. It had been pouring rain all night. It was still drizzling. So he's got me over a barrel. He could have asked for 200,000. I probably would have paid it because I need to get to the dock and it's 4:30 in the morning. There's no other Baychak on the road. And again, we're not talking about a huge amount of money. So if he had said at the very beginning 100,000 rupiah, I would have said absolutely, let's go. And then I would have paid him 100,000 at the dock. We would have parted the best of friends. I would have paid for his gas. Everything would have been fine. But instead, he said 35,000, and then at the dock, he tries to ask for 100,000, like 3 times the agreed upon price. So again, I looked at him and I was kind of aware of the misunderstanding that was going to go on, that we were not going to communicate properly about this, that he thinks probably I'm arguing about the money, that, I don't want to, that's too expensive and I don't want to pay 100,000. But my whole thing was, no, I'm not arguing about the money. I'm just arguing about how you're comporting yourself, how you're behaving. We agreed on 35,000, and now you asking for 100,000. That's just like, oh, come on. You don't. It's just dumb. Don't do this. It's such a waste of time. I don't like wasting time. I don't like things to be illogical. And that was my perspective, but I knew there was no way I was going to be able to get that across to him. But then he said 100,000, and I just said, no, I'm not paying you 100,000 rupiah at this point. We agreed on 35. I paid for the gas in your tank, so you're already ahead of the game, and I'm going to give you 50 more than you asked for, and that's it. Here's 50,000 and we're done. I'm not going to be giving you 100,000 rupiah. And whatever you think about me because of that, that's just, you created this situation. I didn't. Anyway. And then he actually pleaded with me. He put his hands together in like a prayer pleading thing. And he said in English, please, 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 100,000. So which made me feel even worse. So now I'm thinking, I don't know how much money this guy makes in a day. I don't know whether he's supporting 5 starving children at home and he can't pay for I don't know his financial situation. I don't know anything about him. And as I said, I'm more than happy to pay 100,000 rupiah for the trip. But he didn't ask for 100,000. He asked for 35. And then now he's trying to hold me over a barrel and demanding 100. And again, I'm thinking of the other foreigners that come after me. You think as a foreigner you can be nice if you have the financial means, which to be honest, I actually don't. I don't have the money that I can just wander around paying what everybody asks. I'm on a low budget, so I'm as interested in saving money as the next person. I'm not. They look at me, they see a foreigner from Canada. Of course, they think I'm a millionaire. They think I'm incredibly wealthy, and I'm not. So there's that misunderstanding as well. And I'd like to be able to just pay whatever people ask and not worry about a couple of dollars here and there. I'd like to do that, but at the same time, if you just start, I've noticed I was watching a video from Backpacker Ben. He's in Myanmar now. And I noticed that in Yangon, he was doing all these things and taking taxi rides, and he hired like a pedicab to take him places. And then the people would say 10,000 chat. You know, how much he would say at the end of the ride, how much? And they would say 10,000 chat. And then every single time he would say, oh, that's too little. Here's 100,000. Here's 150,000. And he was like overpaying by 5, 10 times the amount. And he thinks he's being a very nice person by giving them a lot more money than they're asking for. And he makes a lot of money from his YouTube channel, and he's staying in 5-star hotels, 5-star beach resorts, hiring private cars to drive him for 8 hours across Myanmar to a 5-star beach resort. So he's got the money to pay for these things. So it's no big deal to him. He's done the currency conversion in his head, and he figures, that's not enough. Here, have 10 times more than what you're asking, which is fine, you're being nice to these people, but at the same time, now they're thinking, well, every foreigner that comes through here is an idiot. They don't understand the value of money, and now that's where the foreigner price comes from. And they start charging more and more and more. So the next time this guy has a foreign customer, he's just going to start asking for like outrageous sums of money. So, I don't like to instantly just pay whatever anybody's asking. It's a complicated question. But anyway, I ended up giving the guy 50,000, and I paid for the gas, filled his tank, whatever. So he was even pleading with me for the 100,000. And to be honest, I may even have done it, given him 100,000, but I knew I didn't have enough money in my wallet anyway. So I knew exactly how much money was in my wallet in Indonesian rupiah, and I knew I needed 100,000 for the tax. There's a port tax you have to pay, and I needed 50 or 60,000 for my luggage, and then maybe I need to tip somebody on the inside. So I had exactly the right amount of money in my wallet that I needed, and if I gave him 100,000, now I'm stuck. I don't have enough money left over to pay the port tax. So, yeah, I couldn't do it. So I gave the guy 50,000. And again, I'll never understand what the problem was, like what was in his mind, why he thought it was better to give a low price at the beginning and then try to scam me, rip me off at the end. Why didn't he just ask for 100,000 at the start? But yeah, I'll never understand. I won't know what he was thinking. I will never know how he viewed me. And after the end of our interaction, when he tells this story to his friends, what story is he going to tell? What is he going to say about me? It's like, yeah, I had this foreigner that I drove to the dock, and he'll paint me in some sort of a weird light from his cultural perspective, where he completely misunderstood my motivations and what I was saying and all these sorts of things. Who knows? You think the story is over, but it is not. I actually have to check my phone right now because I'm going out for breakfast with KY. He might be trying to get in touch with me, so I will be right back, and I might be back with a second cup of coffee. All right, I'm back, and I was right. KY had sent me a message, and we are going out for breakfast, and I think I'm meeting a friend of his for breakfast that he wanted to introduce me to. And he's coming at 9:30, and it's currently 9:20. So I have a few minutes here to perhaps continue with the next stage of this story of all the confusing things that I will never understand and that I will end up taking to my grave. So many happened on this day. It was the most confusing trip I've taken, going between Malaysia and Indonesia. I don't think usually it's quite this confusing, but this time, for whatever reason, everything was confusing. So I just told the story of, going through the gate, not understanding how the price is 5,000. I give them 5,000. They ask for 18,000. I give them 20. They give me 15 and change, which means I ended up paying 5 anyway. That I'll never, ever understand, because we talked about it for so long as well. It was so confusing. And then the whole thing with the becak driver asking for more money, which you can sort of almost expect. And then I had to go into the dock building itself. There's a fence and a gate, and you have to go through the gate, and there's 2 men standing there in uniform. So I go up there with my knapsack and my little weird luggage bag, and then they stop me. I assume I have to show them my passport and my ticket and my boarding pass for the boat because I'm all checked in. I'm ready to go. And they did stop me and say, "Oh, boarding pass. We need your boarding pass." So I hand them my boarding pass, and they look at it, and they hand it back to me and say, no, boarding pass. I'm like, well, there it is. That is the boarding pass. I've got the ticket, and then I have the boarding pass already. The boarding pass is stapled to the ticket, and here's my passport. So what else are we talking about here? And he says, no, boarding pass. I'm like, that is the boarding pass. I'm not quite sure what you're asking for. So language barrier, of course. But then they pointed behind me, and there were 2 metal containers there, or 1 metal container with 2 windows in it. It was like a shipping container, and they cut holes in the wall and put some windows in there. And I guess they turned them into some sort of a makeshift office. And they pointed me towards that. And of course, we're talking about somewhere around 5:15 in the morning. It's pitch black. The roads are muddy, filled with puddles, and there's confusion, lots of people roaming around, Baychak drivers, and all this sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of a chaotic, confusing scene to begin with. But they pointed me towards those windows, so I went up to the one window that had a line up, and I got into line, and I'm thinking, okay, this is weird, but maybe now I have to check in again for the ferry. And I don't know why Indamal would have an office in this weird shipping container. It didn't seem official enough, but I thought, oh yeah, I'll just do what I'm told. So I'm standing in line there for a while, and the guys in front of me are just not moving, not doing anything. Nothing is happening. And I'm thinking, what is this about now? Like, guys, like, if you're not doing anything, get out of the line. Anyway, I didn't understand what was going on there. And then eventually a man came up to me, and I said something about boarding pass. Like, he looked like what do you need? What do you want? And I said, boarding pass? I have to check in? And he pointed to the other window. And there was nobody there. There's nobody behind the window. There's nobody in line at the window. And I'm like, that's where I have to go? So anyway, I take him at his word. I go over to that window, and I have to bend down. Like, the window is like an actual house window, and then it's open, like tilted outward, leaving a small gap just big enough for your head. So I bend down, and I stand up, and I stick my head into this gap like a ghost appearing in his window. And I'm looking into a room with a desk, a man at a computer, and there's like 3 or 4 other men in the room. So it looked like, oh no, you don't stand at the window. Maybe there's a door somewhere, and I just didn't see the door. Anyway, but then the man behind the computer got up and came to the window, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, they always want to know why I'm there. What do I want? And I'm like, well, I don't even know what I want. As far as I'm aware, I have everything I need. But they told me to come here to get something, and they called it a boarding pass, even though I already have my boarding pass. So I'm standing there, and the guy comes up to the window, and then he's like, oh, and he says, well, no, this is for the port tax. This is where you pay the tax for the ferry terminal. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know I have to do that anyway. I assumed I would pay it inside the building, because that's how it was at the old dock. But this is the new dock, and I guess you pay for your port tax out on the street in a shipping container in the jungle, I guess. So the guy said, yeah, it's 95,000, which I knew. So I gave him 100,000, and then he gave me 5,000 rupiah change. And then he sat down and ignored me. He went back on his computer, and then he was dealing with the men standing in line at his desk. And I'm standing there waiting, like, okay, I just paid you for the port tax. I need the document. I need the piece of paper to show somebody there, that you get a little receipt with a QR code, and they scan it, and it shows, okay, you paid the port tax. But he just ignored me. And I'm standing there, and I'm waiting and waiting. I'm like, oh, for Pete's sake, like, did I just get ripped off for another 95,000 rupiah? He's like, oh, dumb foreigner, let's just tell him he needs to give me money, and he'll give it to me. And then I'm waiting for the paperwork, and he's typing away on his computer, but he went back to dealing with the other men. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know what happened here either. This is confusing. And then a man came literally out of the jungle, like out of the darkness. This other man who I hadn't seen at all up until this point, he just appeared out of nowhere, walked up to me, and he handed me a small slip of paper with a QR code on it and said, here, port tax. So I'm looking at him, it's like, are you telepathic? Like, how did you know that I just paid the port tax? And why am I getting the receipt from you and not from the guy that I paid inside the office? Like this guy just came out of the darkness. I don't know where he came from. I don't know how he knew I had paid for the port tax. But he just walked up to me and handed me this piece of paper and said, port tax. So I'm like, okay. I still didn't have a boarding pass based on what the guys at the gate told me. So I thought, but I do have this. I didn't have it before, so maybe now I can get through. So I go back to the gate, and now instead of handing him my boarding pass and my ticket and my passport, I hand him this little slip of paper that the man from the jungle gave me. And then he said, oh, yes, boarding pass. And then they scanned it or they looked at it. I think they just looked at it, and then they let me through. And I stopped for a second because eventually my brain starts to fight back a little bit. Like when it comes to all this confusion, all these things that don't make any sense, I feel like occasionally I have to say something or my brain would explode. So I stopped and I talked to the main guy and I pointed at the piece of paper and I said, well, in English, this isn't a boarding pass. You're using the wrong word in English. I'm trying to help him out for the next time a foreigner shows up. This isn't a boarding pass. This is the port tax. That's what this is. So he wanted me to go pay the port tax, but he didn't know the name port tax. He called it in English a boarding pass. So I was trying to explain to him, no. You're using the wrong words. This isn't a boarding pass. And I showed him my actual boarding pass for the ferry. This is a boarding pass. What you need is a port tax receipt to show I've paid the port tax. And he just looked at me and said, boarding pass. And he waved me away. And then oddly enough, later on, when I got on the boat and I was telling the story on video, I got out all my receipts just to show them, like show and tell. And I got out the port tax document, the receipt, and I looked at it more closely. And at the top, in English, it actually said boarding pass. So the guy was not wrong. Somebody was wrong, like whoever created this receipt and wrote it out on their computer, they chose the wrong English words, and instead of calling it port tax, they called it a boarding pass. So they must have done a Google Translate or looked up online, like, what do you call this thing in English that you have to pay that lets you go into the ferry dock, that allows you to enter? And they came up with the word boarding pass. So from that point, forever into the future, every time you show up at this harbor and you need to pay the port tax, they're going to confuse every foreigner because they're going to tell them they need a boarding pass. Anyway, so that was the other confusing thing. I keep checking my watch, my little time here. So yeah, it's 9:27. KY is usually on time or early, so I'm going to head out into the parking lot and I will finish this story later on because I'm not done yet. There's more confusion to come with the immigration officer. And that one, again, I will take to my grave, and I will never understand what happened. But I'll tell that story after breakfast when I have a chance. So I am outside the hotel now in the parking lot. As I said, the Seafront Hotel, and from here I can see the sea. There it is. Yeah, interestingly enough, like right across from the Seafront Hotel, there is the sea, and then there's this big operation with, I don't know what it is, I'm going to find out, 2 tall white stacks. They look like smokestacks, but I don't see any smoke coming out of them. But I'm not sure what that complex is, some sort of an industrial complex. But I saw them from the Malacca Strait when I was on the ferry. From far away you could see them. And I knew it was near Port Dickson, so I knew we were getting close when I saw those smokestacks. But yeah, I'm out in the parking lot. KY isn't quite here yet. So that's the joy and the ease of audio, because I'm just speaking into my Rode Wireless Go. I have it on the Insta360 invisible selfie stick, actually, like I'm Bob Barker talking into a microphone. But yeah, while I'm waiting for KY, I can continue the story. And now you can hear the outside world a little bit maybe. But yeah, it's just so much easier than video, which I really enjoy for storytelling. You don't have to, and it doesn't take 10 hours or 2 days to edit the video and export it. Much faster to do audio for this behind-the-scenes storytelling. So I hope people enjoy this and it works. Part of my master plan for Patreon. But yeah, I was finally inside the ferry terminal building. And of course, the next thing I had to do was go through immigration. And it was really confusing. The building, I talked about it when I arrived, is very strangely designed. It has a weird design in every way I can think of. And that was when I arrived. And now that I was leaving, it struck me the same way. Because most airports, bus stations, train stations, they evolve over time and they're designed so that when you as a passenger show up, there's a flow, and like there are arrows, and somehow the rooms and the hallways and stairways just sort of guide you to where you need to go next. There's a flow to it. But this building had no flow at all. Like you walk into it and you just don't know where to go. Like you look around to the right or to the left or straight ahead, and then you have no idea what you're supposed to do next. But what I had to do next, as it turned out, was go to a table off in the corner, and there I had to drop off my luggage. And they weigh it, and it costs 4,250 rupiah per kilogram. And with the bag that I had, it was about 10 and a half kilos. And so I had to pay something like 45,000 rupiah. So I got that taken care of. And then I had to go through immigration. But again, I didn't know where to go. It was just completely mysterious. And I'm looking around. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't see any signs for immigration. But there was a stairway, and someone eventually says, oh, you have to go up those stairs. Oh, okay. So I go up the stairs. I get to the top of the stairs, and again, I'm looking around. There was no lineup. There were no people. I was the only person there. And again, I didn't know where to go. I saw some, like a line, like, I don't know what you call those things, the cords that they make a lineup for. I sort of saw those, but there was nobody there. I didn't really see anything that looked like immigration. So I didn't know where to go, and I stood there for a while looking around, and then somebody again saw me and said something to me, shouted something, and pointed that I had to go into that lineup. And then I did that, and at the very front, it's like, oh, there's a couple of desks here, and two men. I didn't even see them until then, and they were the immigration officers. Just didn't look like immigration. I didn't know where to go. So anyway, I go up to the immigration officer and I hand over my passport. And to my surprise and to my dismay, he opened the passport at the very, very front, and then he started flipping through the pages one by one, looking at each page. And I never like it when they do that, because I know the first thing they're going to see is a whole, like a page after page after page of tourist visas from Thailand, because I was in Thailand during the pandemic, and the Thai government offered a special COVID visa extension. So I was able to keep extending my stay 60 days, 60 days, 60 days. But every 60 days, I had to get a new stamp in my visa and pay for a new visa extension. So it looks like I was in Thailand, which I was, for years, and it's just kind of confusing to them. So the guy's looking at all these stamps, and then he says, oh, so you were in Thailand for a long time. Like he's really diving into my history now. And I said, yeah, I was there for a long time. And I said to him, that was during the pandemic, and all the borders were closed, so I couldn't go anywhere, and I stayed in Thailand. And then he didn't understand anything I said, of course. And then he looked at me and says, oh, so you were working in Thailand. He says, no. That was a tour. That was, like, it wasn't really a tourist visa. It was a special visa they created just for the pandemic. But that, of course, is too complicated to explain. So I just said, no, tourist. I was there as a tourist. And he's looking at me like, not working? And then it confuses him that a tourist would be there that long. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm really going to get in trouble here. But anyway, he went by those stamps, and then he went on. Oh, I think KY is here. Yes. So I will end the story here, and I'll continue with my immigration story after breakfast. All right, we've jumped ahead in time and space. In terms of space, I know where I am. I'm now at the J Hotel Masjid India in Kuala Lumpur. So I came here after Port Dickson. KY picked me up, and I hopped in his car. We went to have breakfast with a friend of his, and then we visited his mother, visited it with another friend of his, and we dropped by his family's cemetery. He's paying his respects to his father there. And then we got in the car and drove here to Kuala Lumpur, and then KY dropped me off at my hotel. As I said, my old usual place, the J Hotel Masjid India. They have nice single rooms here at a relatively good rate. So it's a pretty good value, this place overall. And it is, what time is it? Almost 6 o'clock in the afternoon now. So, continuing the immigration story. So the immigration officer was flipping through my passport page by page, and he got through the Thailand stamps, and then he saw all kinds of stamps for Malaysia, places like that. And then, because he was starting from the front of the passport, he came across an entry stamp, a visa sticker, basically, for Indonesia. So he stopped there and went, okay, here is your visa for Indonesia. So he's looking at it and he's reading the details. He says, oh, so you entered through Dumai. And then he's looking at it going, oh, but that was, your visa, you overstayed. You've been here so long, your visa is expired. And he's looking at that, and then I'm saying, no. That's the Dumai. Like when I entered Sumatra through Dumai, that was last year, 2 years ago. That was a long time ago. That's not the current visa. You have to keep going, keep going through the passport. So then he starts flipping through the next pages, and then he comes up to another visa stamp for Indonesia. And he says, okay, here. So now, you entered through Medan, the Kuala Namu airport. And, but that was a long time ago. You overstayed your visa. Look at the date. It expired already. You're leaving too late. And he's implying that I'm in trouble now because I overstayed. And I'm like, no, that visa, that was from 1 year ago. That was a year ago that I went to Medan. You've got to, it's like I'm teaching this immigration officer his job, that you can't start from the beginning of the passport and look at the first visa stamp. You've got to go all the way to the end and look at the most recent one. And of course, you're dealing with an official here. This is an official, controlled, secure environment. I don't want to lean over his desk and then start flipping through the pages of my own passport. There's men with guns probably somewhere, and they see me reaching over the desk. They're not going to like that. So anyway, I'm trying to indicate him, no, you gotta keep flipping the pages, man. You gotta go all the way to the end. And I finally got him to understand that there are more visa stamps. He's not at the end yet. So then he flipped some more pages, and he finally got to the very last page, the most recent one, and there was the visa sticker for Indonesia for this trip. And he's looking at that. It's like, oh, okay, so you arrived in Tanjung Balai, and this visa expires tomorrow, and you're leaving. Oh, okay. But anyway, the guy kind of freaked me out because he was looking at all the wrong stamps in my passport. And this was just one more thing in this journey, a mystery that I will take to my grave, because I honestly don't understand what was happening. How an immigration officer cannot know how to look at a passport. That if you're looking for the most recent visa stamp, you go to the last page in the passport. You don't start at page 1 and assume the first visa you see is the current visa. No, you got to keep flipping through, get all the way to the end. Then you reach a bunch of blank pages, and the very last stamp you see, well, that's the current one. But it was just so weird, the way he looked at the stamps. It was just very, very strange. I felt like I was training him as an immigration officer in how to do this. And it made no sense at all, because the stickers in the passport aren't really for him. They're for me, and for maybe like if I'm out traveling around and somebody at a hotel wants to check my visa status, they can look at my passport, they can look at the sticker. If a police officer stops me, they can look at my passport, they can look at that sticker. But an immigration officer doesn't need to do that because he's got all the information on his computer. All he has to do is look up from my passport, look at his computer screen where my immigration record is, and he will see all the dates and everything for all of my visas going in and out of Sumatra. So why wasn't he looking at the computer screen? Anyway, none of it made any sense to me at all. And it was just one more mystery to add to the many mysteries of this day. But he was a very friendly guy. We were chatting, having a good time. And then eventually he stamped me out. Everything was okay. Once he found the most recent visa sticker, we were good to go, and he stamped me out of the country, and then I was free to walk out onto the docks. And there was my boat, the Indomal Imperial, which was in fact the same boat that I took coming from Port Dickson. So I guess the Imperial is the boat that just goes back and forth between Port Dickson and Tanjung Balai. So I walked down the dock, and they do have this another sort of odd system, but I guess it sort of makes sense, that I walked up to the boat, and I mean, I had checked in my luggage, and as far as I was concerned, okay, I'm done now because I checked in my luggage, I paid for it, they put a luggage tag on it, and then it disappears. It goes onto the boat, and I assumed the next time I was going to see my bag would be in Port Dickson. But what they do on this boat is they take all of the luggage out to the dock, and then they dump all the suitcases, all the bags, all the luggage out on the dock, and then every time a passenger comes up to get on the boat, they stop them and say, oh, can you point out your bag? And then you stand there and then you look out over all the luggage that's laid out on the dock, looking for your own bag. And you say, okay, that's my bag over there, which I did. I saw my bag and I pointed to it. Said, okay, that's mine over there. And then it says, okay. And then, now that I had pointed it out, then they got my bag and then put it into the luggage hold on the boat. It goes into a hole down into the luggage hole. But I don't know, it just seems, I'm not quite sure what the logic is there. Because as I said, I'd already checked in, my baggage was weighed, they put the luggage tag on it, it has all the information on the tag. And then you just figure it would be automated from that point on. You can look at the tag, oh, okay, this bag is going to Port Dickson. And of course, it's the only boat there. It's not like they could put it on the wrong boat. It's not an airport. There's only one boat leaving every day. So it's like, what are they going to do? Put it on a fishing boat? I mean, those are the only other boats within sight are these traditional big fishing boats. There's no other ferry boats. So anyway, I guess it's just a safety check. Make sure they've got all the proper bags on boards. This happened before too, when I remember getting my bicycle and things like that onto the boat, and I assumed that they did it in order to get paid, like a tip of some kind. But then the way it turned out, there was really no opportunity to give anybody a tip. So right now, I couldn't say with certainty, what this system is supposed to accomplish. I honestly can't figure it out. But anyway, once I did that, I boarded the boat. I had a VIP ticket, which allowed me to go up to the top area. And it wasn't that full yet, and I had my choice. There were a whole bunch of different seats available. And I walked around a little bit, and this time, I have an instinct for always picking the worst seat. And in fact, when I first sat down, I did. I always think it's a good place to sit for a bunch of reasons, and then it always ends up being the worst one. And this time I sat down in the seat, and then I started thinking about it, and I thought, I wonder if this is actually the best place to sit. And I got up, and there was another seat at the very, very front, the top left-hand corner, which turned out to be a much, much, much better seat. And I don't know why I didn't figure that out from the beginning, but it's right at the very front, which means I have two windows. I can look out a window to my left, and I can look out a window straight ahead, which is, I get beautiful views for the entire trip. Plus, by being at the very front, it's actually in front of all the TV screens. The way the room is arranged in terms of the geometry, all the TV screens are behind me, which is what I like, because they're just going to play some goofy movie that I don't want to watch anyway, and it won't have any English audio. They won't have English subtitles if it's a foreign movie. So, and it's going to be a dumb movie anyway. It's just going to be some big blockbuster that I have no interest in watching. So it's kind of annoying to sit way in the back, and then you kind of get distracted all the time. You can't help because I got this big, huge widescreen TV at the front, and then a bunch of smaller TVs, and everybody just watches movies the whole trip. And you almost can't help it because you got these screens right in front of your face, and they suck you in anyway, and you end up staring at that screen like you're being hypnotized or something. But this seat that I picked, all I have are windows. There's a window in front of me, and that's all I see. There, all the TV screens are behind me. And I got there's no seats in front of me either. So I had nobody in front of me, and I wouldn't bother anybody. They wouldn't bother me. So I ended up picking a very good seat, the way it turned out. And then there isn't a whole lot to say about the trip. We left 45 minutes late. It was supposed to go at 7, but every boat I've taken has left about an hour late. So to be honest, they should really just change the schedule. Like when they say the boat is leaving at 7, it doesn't. It leaves at 8. If they say the boat is leaving at 10, it never does. It leaves at 11. That just seems to be the accepted schedule. So the schedule just tells them, okay, now the time the boat is supposed to depart, okay, that's when we start getting the boat ready. And then they leave an hour later. So we left an hour late. And it was really nice going up the river. Sitting on the left side was the best choice as well. I figured that out when I got on the boat, because as the boat goes upriver, all of the interesting fishing boats and the fishing villages are all on the left side when you're going out, on the right side when you're coming in. So I got nice views of all the boats, and I took video with my smartphone of all the of all the fishing boats going by. And then eventually I lost connection with the internet as we went out to sea. And then 5 hours later, basically, we arrived at Port Dickson. And because I had arranged to have, I got data onto my Malaysian mobile telecom package. And on the way, I took out my Indonesian SIM card and put in my Malaysian SIM card, which was still valid. So as soon as we got within a couple kilometers of land, or maybe 1 kilometer of Port Dickson, I suddenly had access to the internet again, and I could communicate with KY, who was there to greet me. So yeah, that was a pretty good day. They gave me a box lunch on the boat. I think everybody on the boat gets a meal. And I didn't really like the meal this time. The last time it was like rice and chicken, basically, which is very simple and easy to eat. But this time it was rice and fish. And the piece of fish was inside a plastic bag with a whole bunch of red hot sauce. And then it was tied with a big knot. And then there was some other things all in little plastic bags. So it's really fiddly getting into one of these lunches. I never did eat the fish because I just didn't feel like tearing open that plastic bag, and I was going to get hot sauce all over my hands. I was going to make a huge mess if I tried. So I just opened the other things, which are more dry vegetable things inside plastic bags. They weren't all gooey and covered in sauce. And I just ate the rice, and I ate the veggies and all that kind of stuff. And it was really nice. I felt a lot better after I had something to eat. I always forget that. I wake up in the morning and I don't really want to eat breakfast. I don't want to eat on a travel day for some reason. But then I find when I do have a meal, I do feel quite a bit better afterwards. And beyond that, it was raining a lot once we got out into the strait. It was raining all morning, and then it was raining a lot. So there's no point going out on deck. It was too wet out there. But for about 1 hour before we arrived in Port Dickson, the sun came out. So at that time, I got up and I went to the outside deck, and I was out in the sun for a while and took some video of the wake the boat was leaving behind and things like that, and gave a little video update about the trip. Because one problem with these boats is that they run the air conditioner so much. I think I talked about that already. And it was ice cold. It was just like it was brutal, like you're sitting inside a freezer. And if you didn't bring a jacket and a hat and mittens and a coat and a sleeping bag and a blanket, you freeze to death inside there. So yeah, I was really cold. I got a bad headache because of the cold. And then I went out on deck and I managed to warm up. And just by warming up, my headache went away. So that was kind of nice. Yeah, and then I was here, and KY picked me up, drove me to the Seafront Hotel. I dropped off my bag there. I checked in. I think I told that whole story already. And then KY and I went out for a simple meal. And then he brought me back to the hotel. And I unpacked. And to be honest, I was spent By then I was exhausted. I had no more energy left to do anything. And I just went to bed. I think I shut off the lights at about 8 o'clock, something like that, 8 o'clock at night. But I couldn't really sleep. I was just lying in bed for the longest time. And then somewhere around midnight, I turned the lights back on again, and I was up for a while. But then I was able to sleep from like 2 in the morning until 6 or something like that. I got a good 4-hour chunk of sleep in. So then I felt pretty good after that. Yeah, and that's pretty much the whole story of taking the ferry from Tanjung Balai to Port Dickson. There was nothing to report about. Well, I guess I didn't tell the complete story because when the boat docked in Port Dickson, I still had to navigate immigration and customs. And I talked about this in some other videos about how when you arrive on one of these boats from Indonesia, they have people on the docks in Malaysia who act almost like drill sergeants to organize the Indonesians, because I think historically they're accustomed to the Indonesians sort of rushing immigration. Like they don't have a habit of waiting patiently in line and doing things in a systematic, orderly fashion. There's a little bit of a chaos thing going on. So now the Malaysians try to get ahead of that, and as soon as we get off the boat, they start shouting at us, like yelling at us like drill sergeants, shouting at people to go here, stand here, wait here. And they keep people organized in groups. They separate them into groups and then tell them what to do, where to stand. And you really feel like you're in prison or in the army. And then I ended up getting in trouble one time, which is kind of weird. Something else I don't understand, but now this thing I don't understand is in Malaysia, because I was just standing in line along with everybody else, and I had a knapsack with all of my documents and my camera gear and my laptop that I have right now. All my important things were in my knapsack, not in my checked luggage. And I had my knapsack, I was wearing it on my back. I have my hands free, I'm holding my passport and my ticket, and I have my knapsack on my back. That's why you have a knapsack. But then one of these women who was screaming and shouting at everybody, she came up to me, and she came up to a whole bunch of people, talked to them, and then she got to me and said, yeah, you can't wear your knapsack. You have to take it off. And at first I didn't really understand her because it made no sense to me. I was kind of confused. I said, excuse me, what do you mean? And then she showed me with sign language, no, you have to take off your backpack. You can't wear it. Oh, I don't understand why. I don't know what the problem is, but I took it off, and now I'm holding it in my hand down at my waist the entire time. And I have to assume it's something to do with security, that the bag has to be visible, easily visible, though I guess that makes sense, but I still don't quite understand it, because if the knapsack is on my back, it is perfectly visible. It's right there. Now I'm holding it in my hand. Why is that better for security? It feels like on my back would be more secure because I can't get at it. Like worst case scenario, if I'm some kind of a dangerous person and there are weapons in that bag, well, having it on my back out of my reach, that's the safest place to have it. Having it in my hand at my side, and now everything in that bag is accessible to me very quickly. So why is it more secure? And I ended up not liking it because the bag was pretty heavy. Like I said, I had my laptop in there, all of my electronics, all my camera gear, so it was a pretty heavy. You're only supposed to have, just like an airplane, 7 kilograms in your bag, and I had packed it to about 6.5 kilograms, but now I had all 6.5 kilograms being held in one hand. I'm holding the top strap of my knapsack, and the strap is like digging into my fingers and cutting off the blood flow and stuff like that. So it was really uncomfortable because I stood in the immigration line for a fair amount of time. You shuffle forward one person at a time, and the whole time I'm holding that bag, and my hand was starting to really ache and starting to hurt after a while. I really wanted to wear it on my back. That's the whole point of a backpack. It goes on your back. But standing in line at the Port Dickson immigration counters for the ferry, no, you got to hold it in your hand, not on your back. Again, I don't know why. And then the immigration officer, he was very chatty with me. He was very friendly. He seemed to be a bit of a trainee because there were times when he was looking at his computer screen and looking at my passport, and he didn't seem to know what to do. And he made me nervous because I thought he was going so slowly because he saw a problem with me, and then maybe he was trying to decide, okay, should we pull this guy out of line and take him to an interrogation room or something? But it turns out he just didn't know what to do next. And then he had to call over another guy and ask him. And he's like, so here, what do I do? Do I push this button? Do I click here? What do I do here? And the other guy had to explain to him what he needed to do. And then he did it, and then he stamped my passport. Welcome to Malaysia. And I was back with a 90-day entry stamp, or what they call a social visit pass. And then today, I won't tell the whole story of today, but basically I spent the night at the PD Seafront Hotel. At 9:30 this morning, as I already talked about, KY picked me up, and we went out to meet a friend of his who runs a catering company. Quite an interesting guy to talk to. We had kind of a brunch together. He sort of had a meeting, like a business meeting with his staff and other family members that they all run the company together, and they had a lot of business matters to discuss. And then KY and I and Nizam, our other friend there, we all joined him. So he sat between us and his staff and his family members. So he had a business meeting on his right-hand side, and he had me on his left-hand side. So we were the social lunch, and he had a social lunch combined with a business lunch. And I got to ask him all kinds of questions. I'm fascinated by people who run family businesses. I really want to know how they do it. How does it work? And the history, like how did you get started in the catering business, and how do you run it? And I was asking him all kinds of technical and logistical questions about how the company operates. And I could have talked to him for a couple of hours about that. It was quite interesting. And then eventually KY and I hopped in the car, drove to KL, and here I am at the J Hotel. The name is so complicated, J Hotel Masjid India or something like that. And I'm in what they call their deluxe single room. Long journey to get from the Malahayati Hotel in Tanjung Balai. And I'm finally here at the J Hotel Masjid India. Bit of a journey, as I said, to get here, but I finally made it. Very happy to be here. And I'm going to be here in KL for 6 nights. I didn't really choose to be here for 6 nights. I don't need to be here for that long, but I had no choice in the matter because my visa expiring in Indonesia, I had to leave on the 23rd or the 24th, and then my flight into Jakarta to meet up with my Planet Doug mystery benefactor in Jakarta is on the 30th. So I have a week here. And I'm going to continue working on Patreon, record some Patreon videos, things like that. So that was probably a very long story. So I'm going to end today's podcast there. I'm not going to continue with any YouTube stories or pop culture movie reviews or TV show discussions. I think I'm going to leave it there for now. So, as always, thanks for keeping me company as I tell my stories. I hope you enjoyed. The theme of today's podcast was all this confusion, all these misunderstandings. I will take it all to my grave, because whatever happened on this journey from Sumatra back to Malaysia, all the confusing things that happened, I will never understand any of them. And to be happy living overseas like this, you just have to embrace it. You just have to embrace the confusion, and you have to, come to terms. You have to come to terms with the fact that you will never understand. You can't let it get to you, because that's just the way it is. Some things happened on this journey, and I will never understand what happened, why it happened the way it did. I will never know. And you just have to accept it and move on with life. So that's it, shutting down the Planet Doug podcast, and hope you come back and keep me company in the next one. And as always, I'll see you then.